Good morning, everybody. I got caught taking a drink of water. Sorry. We don't want the show to be late, so... Oh no! Technical difficulties. Don't worry, we're coming right back. There we go. Sorry about that. We have technical difficulties, and that's Brandy giggling in the background. So, there you go. Our show is live. What else can I say? Now you guys know. Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday. We are so close to the long weekend. The sun is shining. We're loving it. Couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier. So glad you guys learned a little bit about garden friends and garden foes. And today I thought we'd talk about weeds. What is a weed? How we treat them? How we consider them? When we think the word weed, our brain tends to go to certain ones that I think we're all familiar with. And very simply, a weed is just an unwanted plant. So if you've got a tree, 12-foot tree in your yard, and it's blocking all the sun from your vegetable, it can be considered a weed. It is an unwanted plant. It is a weed tree. But when we use the word weed, it's kind of like saying a tree and a shrub is a perennial. Arguably it is, but it's not what we consider. When we think weed, we're not thinking that. The first one I get asked about a lot, and I'm doing my best. I've been working on this for a number of years to encourage people, is clover. And clover really only seems to be popular on March 17th. Other than that, nobody else cares about it. People always ask, how do I get rid of clover? And you know what? You can get rid of your weeds, absolutely, and we're going to get to that. But my question would be, why would you want to get rid of clover? Clover is an amazing plant for so many reasons. It requires a lot less water. It has an extensive root network, as anybody who's tried to remove will know. And what those roots do, the way they spread out, means that the actual plant requires less water to keep green than your lawn. Those roots also help break up the clay on the top, so your fertilizer and the water can better get to your grass roots. So they're constantly breaking it up. But at the same time they're doing that, it's such a dense mat of these roots, they stop erosion. So they're actually holding the soil together at the same time. Something else really interesting about the roots, every time a portion of that root system dies, so when you cut it, clover gets this big, you take your lawnmower out, you cut it, some of the root dies. That root that dies actually releases readily available nitrogen into the soil. If you remember our discussion on fertilizers, specifically when we were talking about lawns, nitrogen, above ground leafy growth, like my maple friend right here, okay? Nitrogen is what a lawn needs. The clover is actually helping the soil break up to get nutrients down into your grass. When you cut it, it's feeding your lawn, and it goes harmoniously with grass. So why would you want to get rid of that? It also puts out flowers, those white flowers. The pollinators love it. They are so rich. And the pollinators will come. They'll see that. They'll see all of your clover. They'll come, and then when they're in your garden, they'll look around and go, hey look, there's some tomatoes. I'm going to go over there and pollinate. Oh, I'm going to go check out that sunflower. And they'll do the rest. So people come in and I've got to get rid of my clover, and they try and kill it. Well, you've just weakened your lawn. You've now got dead spots where the clover used to be. If you don't get grass growing there right away, other weeds are going to move in. And what's going to end up happening is overall you're going to weaken it for some more invasive weeds or just bare, hard clay soil. So my question is, why would you get rid of clover? I love it. I absolutely love it. Every garden I'm at, I convert the lawn to clover if I'm not hacking it out. It's so much more beneficial. Another one, and I think like this has to be the king of the weeds. The king of the weeds is the dandelion. It has caused so much stress with our customers. People just don't know what to do with it. Learn to love it. That's my best advice, is learn to love the dandelion. They have become so adaptive, and they are such a great plant. They're edible. Again, that bright yellow flower. If you guys remember when we discussed the flowers, what a flower did. Look, I'll grab this, his biscuits. It's actually his biscuits, but I like calling it his biscuits. Big, huge flower. You got, remember all the stuff we talked about? And this now is being a beacon for your pollinators. Well, imagine a field of yellow. Okay, I don't know if you've ever walked through dandelion fields out in the wild, and they're just covered in bees and hoverflies and butterflies, and they're loving it. They are such an important food source for these pollinators, and we try and kill them, and then we wonder what's happening to the bees. Leave them. Push your lawnmower across them before they go to seed and stop them from spreading. But again, they're not that bad. They're hard to get rid of. We've got all kinds of dandelion weeders. You know, there's a whole market for them. You dig them out, you don't get that whole big taproot, and you know it's gonna come back up. So what ends up happening is you're doing damage to the lawn around it, trying to get this dandelion out. This dandelion isn't doing anything wrong. It is actually helping the overall garden. I personally don't like lawns. I'm not a fan of them. I don't like cutting it. I think it's a waste of water. And this, again, it's a personal choice. My mom loves her lawn. Okay, hi Mom. My mom loves her lawn. It makes her really happy. She loves the greenery and everything else. So there's nothing wrong with loving your lawn. I personally don't. I don't see a lawn as being a thriving, living thing. I want to see clover and I want to see dandelions. And I know this one causes people anxiety, I want to see creeping bellflower. And creeping bellflower, we touched on this, I believe, on Friday, can be a nightmare to get rid of. You break off the root. So creeping bellflower, I'm not going to have enough room to write all these down, so I'm going to call it creepy bellflower. Okay? And what creeping bellflower does, exactly as the name implies, it creeps across and it comes up. You hack it back, again, a big root system, and what ends up happening is that root system breaks off and now you've got two. Those roots can go deep into the hard clay and it can be a nightmare to get rid of. Why tax yourself? Learn to love it. You put clover around it, it's gonna compete naturally and help choke it back. I have creeping bellflower in my lawn. Those invasive roots, as we think of them, are helping stabilize the soil. They're helping keep everything together. Allow the weeds. Have you ever been out in nature and looked and seen just one type of weed, just one type of plant? And I'm talking in the wild. I'm not talking arboretums or city parks or something. I'm talking out in the wild. You don't, because they find a balance, with the exception if there's a noxious weed being introduced. So the idea is to love these weeds. Now, I'm talking about weeds in grass. You've got these weeds in your flower beds, yeah, you might want to get rid of them. And the reason for that is the weeds in the flower beds can actually pull out the nutrients that your plants need. It should be a lot easier to get. You're not going to damage the lawn around them. You can dig down, you can hand weed. Again, I know some of you guys said it too. I love the people who love weeding. A lot of people hate it. Use cultivators, break the soil, get out as much as you can. Use your rocker weeder, get it down, pry back. We've got step-ons, we've got things like that. But clean them out of your flower beds, learn to live with them in your lawns, find that balance. It can be done because the purpose of a weed, and when I'm saying again weeds, I'm talking about the ones that we know about, the ones that we consider, the clover, the dandelion, the plantain, the bellflower. I'm not talking about a weed tree. Those weeds do exceptionally well in poor soil, compact soil, bad conditions. And that's why often when there's an area that's had trucks rolling over it and whatnot, those weeds are the first ones in. And the reason for that is that they can take the condition, but they get in and they start breaking the soil up. The clover start adding nitrogen to it as they're dying back. So all these heavy trucks have driven, they've compacted the soil. All of that great top layer in that topsoil is gone. It's hard clay. Well, now the dandelion leaves are starting to die. Remember when we talked about what soil, what's happening? Bugs are now starting to come back and they're starting to turn it over and we're starting the composition. That's because of these weeds. They have a massive, massive role to play in the whole ecology. They're not an enemy, it's like bugs. People, oh no, it's a bug, it's gotta be bad. Absolutely not. They have to have a place. And finding that balance amongst themselves is incredible. So I will always weed out my flower beds and I will allow them to do their thing in my lawn. And a few years ago, anecdotally, we lived in Mount Pleasant and I had a neighbor come up to me and my tomatoes were full and there was tons of them and all my flowers were prolific. And he asked me how it was like that. My lawn was filled with dandelions, mainly clover. It had creeping bellflower in it. It had plantain in it. You name it. The least amount of thing my lawn had in it was grass. And my yard was full of pollinators all the time. And that's how it works. I'm encouraging them in. I'm keeping my flower beds clean, but I'm gonna have other plants. I'm gonna have perennials. I'm gonna have lavender and hibiscus. And they're all gonna be in my yard. And the pollinators are gonna be like, oh, look at that dandelion. Oh, there's some clover. Oh, there's hibiscus. There's a tomato. And away you go. So that's my take on weeds. But again, my take doesn't have to be yours. I'm just gonna tell you a bit more information. Maybe now you look at clover and you go, oh, it's not the enemy. Clover is actually a friend to grass. It's not killing my grass, it's helping my grass. Some of the most lush lawns I've ever seen are populated with clover. They work so well together. Now, one thing I want to touch on really quickly happens all the time at the acre. If you do have an infestation of weeds and you need to get rid of it, there are chemical sprays. But which is which? There's two main things you have to know. There's selective and non-selective herbicides. Broad spectrum herbicides, whatever the name might be. So, Roundup, I think it's the one most people know and they're familiar with. This is going to kill any plant it touches. Lawn, perennial, it'll damage trees. It might not be able to kill them because of the energy in them, but it's gonna hurt them. This will kill your house plants. You scooch it on, and I'm not gonna spray it, but you scooch it on, and the plant is gonna suffer. Then, you've got your selective ones. Now, these are gonna hurt nearly every single plant but grass. Grass is a very, very simple, one-cell structured plant. It is very, very basic. These aren't gonna hurt grass, but they are going to hurt your dandelions and your creeping bellflowers and whatnot. Some are harder to get rid of. Again, like anything we say, putting in fertilizers, doing a spray like this, combating ants if that's what you want to do. It's very rare, one and done. Any gardener will tell you, you are never done work in a garden. You might be done for the day, you're never done. So, if you're gonna use these chemicals, please make sure. This one will kill anything. It will leave big brown spots in your lawn. If you really want to know how it'll do that, you can always ask my mom. She has made that mistake before. Hi, Mom. I love calling out my friends and family on this show. These are the ones you want to use if you've got to get rid of the weeds in your lawn. If it's not your aesthetic, you can't learn to love them, these are your lawn weeds. So, with all that being said, I hope you guys understand a little bit more about weeds now and how they're not necessarily an enemy. You might have to change your lens on how you've always looked at them and go, hey, you know what? They're not bad. They're actually gonna help my garden. They're gonna bring in the pollinators. They're gonna stabilize the soil. They're gonna fix my nitrogen. They're gonna use less water to get that same result. They can take heavier foot traffic than grass, like win, all the way down. So, aesthetically, if you want lawn, we can help you get there. If you don't mind weeds, I say learn to live with them. I always have. So that brings us to a close. I can't wait for tomorrow. Hawaiian Shirt Friday. We got a bunch of questions, a bunch of shout outs. I just want to say something. I've got a maple here. I hugged him earlier. Maybe we'll talk about giving him away tomorrow. Who would love to win a maple? Maybe I won't give him away. Maybe I will. I'll leave that with you. That's all we've got time for. Bye, everyone.